She saved the wrong man. The first time they met, he was bleeding into the snow. The second time, he ruled the empire that threatened to destroy her own. Long before either of them knew that truth, Lyra Ashbourne lived a simple life in the neutral borderlands. The sanctuary where she worked welcomed every wounded wolf, no matter which kingdom they served. Her father, healer Rowan Ashbourne, had built the refuge with a single promise: a healer chooses life before loyalty. Lyra had repeated those words since childhood. One winter night, a fierce storm swept across the mountains. Just before midnight, frantic voices echoed outside. The sanctuary doors burst open. 4 exhausted soldiers staggered inside, carrying an unconscious man wrapped in a blood-soaked cloak. "Please," one begged, "save him." Rowan pulled back the cloak. A deep sword wound stretched across the stranger's chest. Dark poison had already spread through his veins. No crest marked his clothing. No insignia revealed his allegiance. Only the calluses on his hands and the scars across his body spoke of countless battles. Several healers stepped back. He could be an enemy alpha. If he dies here, we'll be blamed. If he lives, he may return to kill us. Lyra knelt beside the stranger without hesitation. He'll die if we waste another minute. She cleaned the wound, removed broken steel from his chest, fed him herbs to slow the poison. For 3 days and 3 nights, she barely slept. Whenever his fever rose, she cooled his skin. Whenever his breathing weakened, she refused to leave his side. On the 3rd night, Rowan frowned at the stranger's fading pulse. "The poison has destroyed too much blood. There isn't enough time." Without speaking, Lyra rolled up her sleeve. "Take mine." Her father looked at her with concern. "You'll be too weak. He'll be dead." Rowan saw the determination in his daughter's eyes. At last, he nodded. The treatment lasted until dawn. When the first rays of sunlight slipped through the windows, the stranger's breathing steadied. Hours later, his golden eyes slowly opened. They settled on Lyra. He studied her face as though memorizing every detail. His wolf stirred with quiet recognition. A faint smile touched his lips. "I've finally found you," he whispered. Before Lyra could ask what he meant, exhaustion pulled her into sleep beside his bed. When she awoke that evening, the room was empty. The stranger had vanished before dawn. Only a neatly folded blanket remained where he had been lying. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal. Then a column of royal messengers rode into the borderlands, carrying banners that made every healer stop in disbelief. The wounded stranger had not been an ordinary alpha. He was Alpha King Cale Draven, the most powerful ruler on the continent. The woman he was forbidden to love. The news spread across the borderlands before sunset. The mysterious stranger Lyra had saved was Alpha King Cale Draven, the ruler of the Draven Empire, the very kingdom that had battled Lyra's homeland for generations. Within days, another group of riders appeared at the sanctuary. This time, they wore black armor bearing the royal crest. Their commander bowed respectfully before healer Rowan. "His Majesty wishes to meet the healer who saved his life." The sanctuary fell silent. Several elders exchanged uneasy glances. Rowan folded his arms. "My daughter belongs to no king." The commander remained calm. "His Majesty wishes only to thank her." "Today," Rowan replied. "Tomorrow, another kingdom may call it an act of allegiance. We remain neutral." The soldiers returned without Lyra. Everyone assumed that would be the end of the matter. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, Lyra walked alone to a meadow near the border to gather moon herbs. A familiar voice spoke behind her. "I thought your father might say no." She turned. Cale stood beneath a pine tree, wearing a plain travel cloak instead of royal robes. No guards, no banners, only a tired smile. "You came yourself," she said. "I owed you my thanks." He held out a small bundle of wildflowers. "I wasn't sure which ones you liked." Lyra blinked in surprise. No one has ever brought me flowers. Kale rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. I guessed. She laughed. It was soft and unexpected. For the first time since ascending the throne, Kale forgot the weight of a kingdom resting on his shoulders. That afternoon they spoke for hours. Not about war, not about politics, but about ordinary things. Favorite seasons, childhood memories, the taste of fresh bread baked over an open fire. When the sun began to set, Kale rose. I should go. You probably should. But I'd like to come back. Lyra hesitated. You'll start rumors. They're already talking, he replied with a grin. Over the following months, he returned again and again. Never with soldiers, never with demands. Sometimes they shared tea beside a quiet stream. Sometimes they cooked simple meals over a campfire. Once, Kale spent an entire afternoon trying to catch fish and failed so spectacularly that Lyra laughed until tears filled her eyes. I've defeated armies, he muttered, but apparently fish are beyond me. Those moments became the happiest either of them had ever known. With Lyra, Kale stopped dreaming about expanding borders. He began dreaming about ending wars. With Kale, Lyra saw not an alpha king, but a lonely man who longed for a world where love mattered more than power. Slowly, without either of them intending it, they fell in love. Far away in the imperial capital, however, Kale's closest advisors noticed the change. Their king smiled more, spoke less of conquest, and disappeared from the palace far too often. They quietly ordered trusted spies to discover exactly who had captured the Alpha King's heart. Summer painted the borderlands in fields of wildflowers. For nearly a year, Lyra and Kale met whenever duty allowed. No crowns, no court, no titles. Only two people who forgot, for a few precious hours, that they belonged to kingdoms destined to be enemies. One evening, they sat beside a campfire overlooking the valley. Kale carefully stirred a pot of stew. Lyra tasted a spoonful. She laughed. You've added salt twice. He frowned. I knew something seemed wrong. She reached over and gently took the wooden spoon from his hand. Here, watch. For a moment, everything felt wonderfully ordinary. Then Lyra's smile faded. We have to stop this. Kale looked up. What do you mean? Our meetings. She stared into the fire. Every time you come here, someone could see you. If your council discovers us, they'll accuse you of betraying your kingdom. And if mine does... She couldn't finish the sentence. Kale moved closer. I don't care what they say, but I do. She met his eyes. I love you. The words hung between them. So much that I refuse to become the reason another war begins. Kale reached for her hand. Then I'll change the world. She smiled sadly. One man can't change centuries overnight. Neither noticed the pair of hidden eyes watching from the trees. The spies reported everything. Within weeks, Kale made decisions he believed would keep Lyra safe. Without telling her, he stationed trusted guards in villages surrounding the borderlands. He ordered scouts to report any strangers traveling near the sanctuary. He secretly purchased the forests and farmlands surrounding Lyra's home through wealthy merchants, ensuring no rival alpha could claim them. To Kale, it was protection. To everyone else, it was an invisible cage. Lyra discovered the truth by accident. A frightened merchant apologized for refusing to sell medicine. I can't, he whispered. The land belongs to the Alpha King now. Confused, Lyra began asking questions. The answers horrified her. That evening, she found Kale waiting beside their usual stream. Did you buy the land around my home? He hesitated. Yes. And the guards? They're there to keep you safe. The spies? His silence was enough. Lyra stepped back, as though he had struck her. You've been watching me? I've been protecting you. I never asked for protection. His voice softened. I couldn't risk losing you. She shook her head. You don't understand. No. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You don't understand. I fell in love with the man who respected my choices, not the king who thinks love gives him the right to make them for me." Kale reached toward her. "I'm only protecting what's mine." The words left his mouth before he realized what they meant. Lyra's face crumpled. "I was never yours to own." She turned and walked away. Hidden far beyond the trees, Kale's enemies received the reports they had been waiting for. They had finally discovered the Alpha King's greatest weakness. It wasn't his throne. It was the woman he loved. The attack came before sunrise. Lyra awoke to the sound of wolves howling, not in warning, in terror. A moment later, the sanctuary bells rang across the valley, over and over, too fast to count. She rushed outside. Smoke already curled above the rooftops. Flames leaped from one wooden house to the next. Masked warriors poured into the valley from every direction. They ignored the gold stored in the trading hall. They ignored the horses in the stables. They set fire to homes, destroyed food supplies, and hunted anyone who tried to escape. "They're not here to conquer," Rowan said, gripping Lyra's shoulders. "They're here to send a message." His face hardened. "Get the children." Lyra didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the sanctuary school, where frightened boys and girls huddled together, crying as the roof above them groaned beneath the heat. "It's all right," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "Stay close to me." Smoke burned her lungs as she led them toward the rear entrance. Outside, Rowan held back 3 attackers with nothing but a healer's staff. He had never been a warrior, but he stood between the children and death without a second thought. "Run!" he shouted. Lyra gathered the youngest child into her arms. The others followed. Just as they reached the edge of the forest, a deafening crack echoed behind them. She turned. The sanctuary roof collapsed in a storm of fire. "Father!" Rowan looked at her one last time. There was no fear in his eyes, only pride. Then burning beams crashed down around him. The flames swallowed him whole. Lyra's scream tore through the valley. Hours later, the thunder of thousands of hooves shook the mountains. Kale's army arrived in full force. The rival Alphas fled before the Imperial soldiers could surround them. The battle ended almost as quickly as it had begun. But the victory meant nothing. The sanctuary was gone. The little stone clinic where Lyra had learned to heal had become blackened ruins. The herb gardens her father had planted with his own hands were reduced to ash. Families wandered through the smoke, searching for loved ones who would never answer. Kale found Lyra kneeling where the sanctuary had once stood. Her father's healer's staff lay broken across her lap. He fell to his knees beside her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I came as fast as I could." She looked at him, not with hatred, with unbearable sadness. "They didn't destroy my home because they hated me." Her voice was almost too quiet to hear. "They destroyed it because you couldn't let me live free." Kale felt the words strike deeper than any blade. Every hidden guard, every spy, every decision he had called protection had made her the center of his enemy's plans. He reached for her hand. She stepped away. Without another word, Lyra picked up her father's broken staff and walked toward the road leading out of the valley. She never looked back. Kale remained alone among the ashes, watching the woman he loved disappear beyond the smoke. For the first time in his life, the most powerful Alpha King in the world realized that his greatest enemy had been himself. By the time Kale ordered his riders to follow Lyra, she was already gone. No destination, no message, no farewell. Only the broken healer's staff she had carried away from the ashes of her childhood. For months, Kale searched every kingdom. His soldiers visited villages. His ambassadors questioned healers. His scouts followed every rumor of a young Omega traveling alone. Each trail ended the same way. Too late. Lyra had already moved on. At first, Kale doubled the search. Then he remembered the last words she had spoken. You couldn't let me live free. For the first time since becoming king, he called off the hunt. If she does not wish to be found, he told his commanders, no one will follow her. It was the hardest order he had ever given. Meanwhile, Lyra crossed mountains, forests, and rivers, with nothing more than a satchel of herbs and her father's teachings. Wherever war had left ruins, she stayed long enough to help rebuild. She stitched wounds, delivered babies, comforted grieving families. Then she quietly continued her journey. She never asked which pack someone belonged to. If they were hurting, she healed them. In one village, rival wolves refused to share the same well. Lyra gathered the children from both sides and taught them to grow medicinal herbs together. By harvest season, their parents were working beside one another. In another town, two neighboring packs argued over food supplies after a harsh winter. Lyra convinced both leaders to open a shared kitchen. Within weeks, no child went hungry. Word of the wandering healer spread across the continent. People stopped calling her an omega. They began calling her the bridge between packs. Ironically, the peace Kale had once tried to secure through armies and treaties, Lyra achieved with kindness, patience, and quiet courage. Back in the capital, every report about her reached Kale's desk. He read each one, then carefully folded it away. He never sent soldiers. He never sent gifts. He never tried to claim a place in her life again. Instead, he asked himself the question that haunted every sleepless night. If I truly loved her, why did she only become free after she left me? The answer was painful, because somewhere along the way, he had stopped protecting Lyra's happiness and started protecting his fear of losing her. That realization changed him more than any battlefield ever had. 1 year after the sanctuary burned, Kale summoned the royal council. The empire expected another declaration of war. Instead, their Alpha King announced a decision that would shock the entire continent. The royal council gathered expecting vengeance. Generals arrived wearing ceremonial armor. Ministers carried maps marked with enemy borders. Everyone believed Alpha King Kale would unleash the largest military campaign in the empire's history. Instead, he entered the council chamber without his sword. He looked older, not in years, in understanding. Kale stood before the throne and spoke quietly. I have spent my life believing strength meant control. He looked at every face in the chamber. I was wrong. A stunned silence followed. His Minister of Defense stepped forward. Your Majesty, the coalition that destroyed the border sanctuary must be punished. They already have been, Kale replied. They exposed the greatest flaw in my own heart. He unfolded a royal decree. Effective immediately, every surveillance network operating within the empire is dissolved. The chamber erupted in protests. Our spies protected the realm. They also violated innocent lives, Kale answered. A second decree followed. Every parcel of land secretly purchased around the borderlands is returned to its original owners without condition. Several nobles exchanged shocked glances. A third decree. The royal treasury will finance the rebuilding of every village destroyed during the recent conflict, regardless of which kingdom it belongs to. Even Kale's closest advisors struggled to understand. Then came the final announcement. Kale removed the royal crown from his head. Its weight echoed through the chamber as he placed it gently upon the throne. Gasps filled the room. My sister, Princess Elowyn Draven, has spent years urging peace, where I sought victory. He turned toward her. The empire deserves the ruler she has always been. Elowyn's eyes filled with tears. Brother, Kale smiled. You taught me that the strongest ruler isn't the one people fear. It's the one they trust. Before the assembled court, he knelt. I abdicate the throne. The transfer of power became the most astonishing event in the empire's history. When reporters asked why the most powerful Alpha King on the continent had surrendered everything, Kale answered with complete honesty. I confused love with possession. I won't make that mistake again. He left the capital with a single travel bag, no royal escort, no banners, no title. He spent the following years where he was needed most, repairing homes, carrying timber, serving meals in refugee camps, learning first aid from village healers. Few people recognized the former king beneath the dust on his clothes and the calluses on his hands. He never corrected them. He wasn't waiting for Lyra to appear. He wasn't trying to earn praise. For the first time in his life, he was simply becoming the man he wished he had been when they first met. 3 years passed. High in the northern mountains, a new healing sanctuary opened its doors. On the morning the first patients arrived, a woman carrying a worn healer's satchel stepped through the gate. Her name was Lyra Ashbourne, the second chance they both chose. The mountain sanctuary buzzed with quiet purpose. Children carried baskets of herbs through the gardens. Volunteers repaired fences damaged by winter storms. Healers welcomed patients from every kingdom without asking where they came from. Lyra paused at the entrance. Something about the place felt familiar, not because of the buildings, because of the spirit behind them. No one was turned away. No one was judged. It reminded her of the sanctuary her father had built. A loud laugh drifted from the courtyard. She turned. A tall man stood on a ladder, replacing broken shingles, while 3 orphaned boys argued over how to hand him the tools. "Not that hammer," he called down with a grin. The other one, the youngest boy, accidentally passed him a wooden spoon instead. Everyone burst into laughter. The man laughed the hardest. Dust covered his clothes. His hands were rough from years of labor. There were no royal robes, no guards, no crown, only kindness. He climbed down from the roof. When he turned, their eyes met. Cale recognized her immediately. For a heartbeat, joy flashed across his face. Then he stopped himself. Years ago, he would have crossed the distance without hesitation. Now, he stayed exactly where he was. He smiled gently. Nothing more. The choice belonged to her. Lyra noticed everything. The absence of soldiers, the lack of hidden guards, the freedom in the way everyone around him moved. No one watched him with fear. No one obeyed because they had to. They simply worked together. She walked toward him. "I heard the former Alpha King works here." Cale chuckled softly. "I hear he's finally learning." She folded her arms. "Are you?" "I think so." He looked around the sanctuary. "I spent years believing love meant keeping someone safe at any cost." His eyes returned to hers. "I finally realized that if the person I love loses their freedom, then I've protected nothing at all." Lyra searched his face. There was no desperation, no pleading, no demand that she forgive him. Only quiet honesty. She reached out slowly, not because he asked, because she wanted to. Their hands met. Warm, steady, equal. "This time," she said, "if we build a future, it won't belong to you. It won't belong to me. It will belong to both of us." Cale's smile was small but genuine. "And every day, I'll remember the difference." The children nearby cheered as the repaired roof held against a sudden gust of wind. Lyra looked up and laughed. For the first time since the sanctuary burned, the sound came without sorrow. Together, they walked toward the unfinished clinic, not as a king and the woman he loved, not as someone pursuing and someone fleeing, but as 2 healers ready to rebuild what war, pride, and fear had once destroyed. Side by side, by choice. The mountain sanctuary grew 1 stone at a time. No royal treasury built it, no conquering army protected it. It rose because ordinary people believed in what Lyra and Cale had created together. Refugees carried timber. Former soldiers laid foundations. Healers planted gardens filled with herbs gathered from every kingdom. No one asked who had once been friend or enemy, only who still needed help. Lyra directed the medical wing with the same quiet compassion her father had taught her. Every patient received the same care. The poor slept beside nobles. Children from rival packs played together while recovering. Illness recognized no borders. Neither did healing. Kale never tried to lead. If a roof leaked, he repaired it. If supplies arrived, he unloaded the wagons. If an elderly traveler needed help climbing the hill, he offered his shoulder before anyone could ask. Many newcomers never realized the humble carpenter carrying lumber had once ruled the largest empire on the continent. He preferred it that way. One afternoon, a young volunteer approached Lyra. "Is it true the former Alpha King works here?" She smiled. "Yes." The volunteer looked surprised. Then, "Why is he fixing fences instead of giving orders?" Lyra watched Kale laughing with a group of children as they struggled to build birdhouses. Because he finally learned that service isn't beneath leadership. It's the highest form of it. As the years passed, the sanctuary became a place where impossible friendships quietly began. Former enemies shared meals. Border disputes were settled around healing tables instead of battlefields. Young healers traveled from distant kingdoms to study Rowan Ashbourne's teachings. Above the entrance to the main hall, his favorite words were carved into polished stone. "A healer chooses life before loyalty." Beneath those words, Lyra and Kale worked every day, not because they owed the world redemption, but because they had found purpose together. One evening, after the last patient had fallen asleep, they stood overlooking the valley. Lanterns glowed warmly below. Children's laughter drifted through the cool mountain air. Kale gently took Lyra's hand. This time, he waited. When she intertwined her fingers with his, it was entirely her choice. "I used to think love meant never letting go," he said quietly. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder. "And now?" he smiled. "Now I know love breathes best when both hearts are free." She looked across the sanctuary they had built together. "It took us a long road to learn that." It did. But every step brought us here. Above them, the stars stretched across the sky. Below them, a sanctuary founded on compassion welcomed every soul who entered. Not because of power, not because of fear, but because love, at last, had learned to leave room for freedom. Years passed, and the mountain sanctuary became the largest healing refuge in the known world. Travelers crossed deserts, forests, and seas to reach it. Kings stood beside farmers. Alphas waited beside omegas. Children from rival packs shared meals without knowing their families had once fought on opposite sides of the battlefield. Within the sanctuary, no one was measured by rank, only by need. Lyra often walked the grounds at sunrise. Every blooming herb garden reminded her of the valley she had lost. She no longer saw only ashes. She saw what had grown because people had chosen compassion over revenge. Kale usually began each morning repairing something. A broken gate, a loose roof tile, a cracked wooden bench. Visitors were often astonished when they discovered the quiet carpenter was once the Alpha King who had ruled an empire. He always smiled and answered the same way. "I led a kingdom. Now I help build a home." Near the sanctuary entrance stood two simple stone tablets. The first bore the words Lyra had chosen in memory of her father, and everything their journey had taught her. "Love that demands ownership will always leave scars." Beside it stood a second inscription, carved at Kale's request. "Love that protects another's freedom becomes worthy of forever." Every child who entered the sanctuary stopped to read them. One afternoon, a little girl tugged gently on Lyra's sleeve. "Are these two different kinds of love?" Lyra smiled. "They're the same love." The girl tilted her head. "I don't understand." Kale knelt beside them. "The first is what love becomes when fear tries to control it." He pointed to the second inscription. "And this is what love becomes when it learns to trust." The little girl thought for a moment. Then she reached for her younger brother's hand. I'll always let you choose. Kale and Lyra exchanged a quiet smile. Sometimes the greatest lessons needed only the simplest words. As the years passed, neighboring kingdoms signed peace agreements beneath the sanctuary's roof instead of on battlefields. Young healers carried Rowan Ashbourne's teachings across the continent. Children grew up believing that helping a stranger was more honorable than defeating an enemy. Many believed the story of Lyra and Kale was a tragedy. Those who knew the whole truth understood something deeper. Their love had not nearly destroyed everything because they loved each other. It had nearly destroyed everything because one man had mistaken devotion for control. Only when he learned to let go did she finally choose to walk back to him. And together, they built something no army could ever conquer. A place where healing came before hatred, freedom came before fear, and love finally became worthy of forever.